And ride with me in my foul life.
Another one coming at you. The Foul Life Podcast brought to you by our friends at Gerber. Gerber Gear. Stay sharp, America. Carry a blade wherever you go. Be safe with it. I rely on them. Toolboxes, blind bags, backpacks, everywhere we go in our duck blinds, our boats, our ATVs, our trucks. We carry Gerber with us. You never know when you're going to need to build a duck blind with one of their hatchets or saws, or cut some of the meat off of a mallard or a goose or whatever you're getting ready to throw down on a wild game recipe that night. Depend on Gerber to get you taken care of. Thank you, Gerber, for believing in the culture of the American outdoorsman, the hunter, the fisher, the conservationist, and the provider. I'm excited as heck for today's episode. I have one of the best all-around human beings to ever be part of the hunting industry, the hunting culture. Specifically, he's a duck caller, a world champion duck caller, and he's also a husband, a father. He is pretty much the face of Rich and Tone TV, RNT-V. You guys have seen it on the Sportsman's Channel. You've heard him on several other podcasts. You cannot go to bed at night without thinking of one of the coolest sayings in the duck calling industry of all time. And if that doesn't light your fire, your wood's wet. Jim Ronquest, my brother, how are you?
Man, I'm great, Chad. Thank you so much. Appreciate that kind intro. Most appreciated.
Buddy, I appreciate everything you've done for this industry, but I wanted to ask you, starting off, is Stuttgart, Arkansas, where you make your home and your living, is it really the duck capital of the world, Jim Ronquest?
Man, that's a great question. That's a really good one to lead off. You can answer that two ways. If you answer that based on the marketing and all that goes on here with the World Championship Duck Calling Contest since 1935, or 36, excuse me, other than the year of the pandemic, 2020, have to put an asterisk by 2020. And based on that marketing scheme and the talk about it, yes. And if you think about it from a duck hunting perspective, a green timber duck hunting perspective, still, yes, because of all the opportunity. You look at mallard harvest numbers as a state, we still lead mallard harvest numbers as the state does across the entire country. However, that being said, there are probably places in the country where the ducks per man per day average could be better than here. So from an overall perspective, yes, but there's probably some better duck hunting in other places.
You mentioned something there that raises a question to me, Jimbo, is if you come out to the Pacific Flyway, which I know you have, it's a 105-day season, 7 ducks per man per day, and 7 of those ducks, all 7 of those ducks in your strap can be a green-headed mallard.
You bet.
You take that and you cut the season almost in half with a 60-day season with a limit that is only 4 mallards per man. How in the heck does a place like Arkansas drive that many harvest numbers? I've always said this, Jimbo, and this is kind of a two-sided thought and question, but I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that has people actually land on an airstrip in an airplane, private or commercial, to go chase ducks. Now, I know that there's awesome duck hunting in California, but there's not a lot of people landing in Sacramento to go to the Butte Sink. That's a local deal or a Bay Area deal. There's not a lot of people even landing in Baltimore or Washington, D.C. to hunt the historic Chesapeake Bay anymore because of the numbers are down. You can only kill one Canada goose. The mallard hunting really isn't there. But think about that way. 4 ducks per day. And you guys are killing more mallard ducks than any other state in the country. Is it residents and a ton of non-residents doing it? Or are you guys just so mad at them that y'all are after them that hard?
It's residents and non-residents alike. The last few years, we've been selling roughly statewide 100,000, 102,000 duck stamps per year, which is incredible. Compared to other states. And our hunting is, even though we had probably our lowest mallard harvest ever last year, I guarantee you we'll still lead the country. And it would probably be somewhere around 400,000, I think preliminary 400,000 to 500,000 mallard ducks, not including all the other ducks. So our hunting's maintained enough that we're still doing pretty well, and people still want to come here. I talked to folks this past week that was part of our Callapalooza event we had here at the shop, and they were like, man, we like to come out here duck hunting, and y'all get worried if we don't have a good hunt, but we get to see more ducks than we get to see almost anywhere else we go. Now, granted, there are other hot spots around the country. You mentioned the Pacific Flyway. There's a lot of great hunting in all parts of the country, but folks just still want to come here.
The way that I describe it, and I've been lucky enough to get to experience what you're talking about, both the green timber and, more importantly to me, the culture of what being in somewhere like the Rich and Tone shop is, or Max Prairie Wings, or the Cajun, or any of the landmarks, or seeing the stage down on Main Street, which we'll get into. I've had unbelievable mallard duck hunting success on the Snake River. I've had it on the Missouri River, the Mississippi, all over the country. You know how Idaho is, and Eastern Washington is, and Montana.
Man, it's on my bucket list right there.
Yeah, but never will you go into a place like Boise, Idaho, or Hagerman, or anywhere around where the really good mallard hunting is, or in Wyoming, or around the Yellowstone River of Montana, and pull into a cafe and have every trucker car. I've seen cars with boats on them in Arkansas. It's just the culture of the duck hunter down there. There's something to be said about every man and woman and kids has their blue jeans tucked into their mud boots. They got their duck call lanyard on their flannel after the hunt's over, with the duck call put into their little pocket like it was a pocket protector for your pencil in college. You don't see this in other places in the country, Jimbo. I'm sure that you would attest to that. You've been to Los Banos, you've been all over Chico, you've been all over California with the guys out there. There's a lot of good duck hunting in that part of California, but the culture is what I'm chasing these days. And I think that's what brings me back to Arkansas.
And you 100% get it. Our hunting culture here, not just duck season, but duck season, deer season, turkey season, people are used to it. And it's something I noticed traveling around the country. You mentioned how folks dress. You can be in rural America anywhere, and it's not crazy to see somebody wearing camouflage. That being said, you still get more crazy looks or more comments if you're in central Kansas and you go in a restaurant at 10:30, 11 o'clock for late breakfast or lunch, and you got camouflage pants and shirt on, tucked in a pair of knee boots, somebody's going to look at you funny, or somebody's going to say, "Oh, I can't see you," or "You're invisible," or you don't get those comments around here because folks are so used to seeing it, and there's something to be said for that.
I think it's the coolest part of our industry, of our culture, that I always talk to people about. One of the main questions, and I'm sure you get asked it a lot, is where's your favorite place to hunt ducks? And I said, man, I've had unbelievable rosy bill hunts in Argentina. I've had unbelievable teal hunts in Texas, and all over the country. I've experienced mallard ducks by the thousands in pea fields in Canada, North Dakota cornfields, right? But if it was my holy grail, if it was my last supper of duck hunting, it would be in Arkansas. It would be in the Grand Prairie. And if I didn't even see a duck, I'd be, all right. But just the whole culture of that place and the anticipation, the feeling that you have when you're there, if you leave Little Rock and you cut over and you start getting down into the prairie, there's just this feeling that, man, this is where it's at. This is where I'm supposed to be. And the first time I ever went was in 1999 for the World Championships, when our little mutual buddy, John David Stanley, blew the light and I won the Nevada State Championships, which is a total fluke. But I got to blow in the World Championships duck calling contest. And when I got down there, I never quit going to Arkansas. Never quit going. And that's saying a lot, because if you really want to be honest, the duck hunting's been average for myself personally the last 3 seasons on the times I chose to be there, on the hunts, the weather. Mother Nature might not have cooperated. I need sunshine. We'll talk about your theories on sunshine in a little bit, but I didn't get it a bunch, but I still did not want to leave, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it makes perfectly good sense. What you mentioned there is that history is knowing who's been here and who's done what they've done. The idea that John Olin used to rent the whole fourth floor of the Ryson Hotel for the entire duck season and bring in guests. I get to help out some at the old Winchester Duck Club, Greenbrier, it's called. You may have caught that show. And it's cool to read the old guest book and read all the different names and captains of industry has been there and people highly involved in the outdoor industry, which is important to you and I, along with outdoor riders and military people. And thinking when you're in those woods, you're thinking, and not just those woods, but just using them as an example, who has came here before me? And that is truly hallowed ground. And I think a lot of that is because of our interest, not only in what we do, our avocation and our vocation are the same. We enjoy waterfowl and duck hunting, turkey hunting, deer. We enjoy it. And there's so much of that history that our industry's been built on today. This is where a lot of that started. And that's what makes it cool, I think. So I agree with you.
What about the application and the process of hunting in that area, Jimbo, with the heritage of the timber? First off, tell the audience, please, why you say green timber. Is there a different kind of flooded timber in Arkansas, and what does green timber mean specifically?
You bet. So when you discuss green timber, or I typically call it woods, is more my preference, but it means it's live, living trees. Now, there's also cypress and tupelo brake hunting that are live trees. Those are typically swamps that'll stay flooded year round, and it won't hurt them. We talk about green timber, you're talking about the different red oak species of oak trees that can be seasonally flooded and not hurt them, hopefully. That's what we're talking about there. What you hear people call pin oak flats, which is truly willow oak or nuttall oak, cherry bark, southern red, water oak. The different red oak trees are what we're hunting. They produce a small acorn that ducks love to eat. It's jet fuel protein for a mallard duck. And they're also good about bugs. There's a lot of bugs in there with the leaf litter. We're getting into other parts of it. And then there's also could be dead timber duck hunting. If, old dead tree reservoir, old dead creek, what we would call a deadening. There's some of that too. But typically when you talk about hunting woods, green timber duck hunting, there's some in several different states besides here, but we got the biggest majority of it.
Well, let's talk about that timber in two ways so you can. I love getting educated by it. Your knowledge is unbelievable, like to be able to rattle off just that many types of subspecies of red timber, which I think is killer to know that we are hunting red timber, but you call it green timber because it's alive.
Well, it's not necessarily red timber, it's red oak trees.
Red oak trees.
You think of oak trees. So think of red oak, and there's different subspecies of red oaks.
Different subspecies of red oaks.
Yes. So it's called green timber because it's live. It's green. So it's green. If you cut it, it's going to be full of sap. But the main trees that make it important are different red oak trees.
Is it safe to say...
You've always heard the term pin oak flat? Huh?
Yes. Yep.
So a pin oak is a red oak.
Pin oak is a red oak. And like, if you look at, I got the feather on this Max Prairie Wing shirt, but there are several t-shirts that will have a tree on it. Is that safe to say that tree on a Max shirt is probably a pin oak?
I'd have to look at it to see. It's probably what they infer it to be anyway. Whether the tree is actually a pin oak or not, I don't know, but I'm sure they infer it to be that.
What year, Jim, was the boom of rice? And where I'm going with this, and I want you to educate the audience on this, but I assume and I visualize at one time in America, if I was in a crop duster flying above the Grand Prairie, it was all trees. Is the reason that there's rice around there now, was that a bunch of those trees were cut out and turned into rice levees and rice fields, but those ducks still were going there? So once they get down there now, they got a lot of buffet and food with the rice, but they still have to find those little slits of timber that still might be there when they were used to it all being timber, right?
Kind of, yes. You're on the right track. So I can't pull it up on the computer, but the Grand Prairie, there was a natural prairie here. It was full of lots of moist soil, a lot of upland species. Prairie chickens were popular at one time on the Grand Prairie because it was prairie, similar to what you might see in the Dakotas. not that big. So as rice production started in the 1900s, once we started gaining rice and it started growing, the production of rice started getting bigger and bigger. People were plowing ground, busting sod, turning the prairie into rice production. As that got to be more and more prevalent, then so a bunch of the timber started getting cut. The Grand Prairie was big, but it's been made bigger because of clearing the woods. So a lot of what the really good private green timber places that are left and the state and federal ground were spared the saw and the plow due to rice. They were really low, stayed wet, couldn't do nothing with them. So although the prairie was here and it was broke first, planted the rice and beans, as that commodity started getting to be more prevalent, then they started clearing timber to make room for more rice, if that makes better sense.
And when you say more rice, it is now one of the leading rice production areas in the world. Is this fair to say?
We probably produce more rice. Well, I know we do. We produce more rice than anybody in the country. Now, there's other rice production areas, California, Texas, South Missouri, Louisiana, but we produce more rice than any other state in the country.
So with all of that rice there, educate the audience now, Jimbo, when you mention the small acorn, when you're in timber, it's going to be hard for a bird of prey or, per se, to mess with a wild duck or even a deer that might be down there trotting around in the low water. Is it all, am I off by saying that I would argue that ducks are going in there to get security and to get safety and to rest during the day? Or are they actually leaving and talk about this though, that they're in the rice fields at night, which, most places they fly back to a big water where there's not a lot of food. Then they come back to the food source in the morning. In Arkansas, they're eating in the rice overnight and returning to this green timber in the morning, which is where Jim and all of his friends are waiting for them, standing up against a tree, which we'll get into. But you're telling me that they're actually going in there to eat more after they just got done eating all night in the rice?
Yes, I am. It depends on what they're looking for, right? So kind of like, I hate to use a human analogy here, but some days you want a ribeye, some days you want a piece of chicken, and for a duck, it's not that simple. There's physiological needs that they need at different times of the year. So they may be in a flooded rice field, eating waste grain and might be coming back to the woods to rest, which they do. So let me back up with this. Ducks use woods for different reasons. So they'll come in there for pair bond isolation late in the year, come in there to eat, whether it be acorns or in January when they start bugging, water will get low and the hens, they need a lot of protein, so they'll be chasing bugs. You've heard of duck eat a June bug. Well, man, they'll eat a bug before quick gets ready. They're coming in there and they're sifting through that leaf litter for a bug bloom. We get a January warm up there after those bugs. And then they come in there for temperature, temperate matters. There's kind of a natural insulation to the woods. And to your point, you mentioned avian predators. So they're coming to use the woods for a lot of things, for cover, food, pair bond isolation, and to get in and out of the elements. They'll also go into rice fields to bug, waste grain, flooded corn. That's like everybody else. They're going to go eat corn. Soybeans, you'll see them a lot of times here late in the year, shallow water soybean fields. There's a little tuber that starts coming up in there, and they're after the bugs, and them little tubes. So they use a variety of different habitats during the course of the season and the day as necessary. So they may leave the fields, come to the woods in the morning, hang out in the woods the afternoon, and go back to the fields at night. But the more of that buffet you can offer them, the more diverse of a buffet you have, the better you'll take care of your ducks, if that makes any sense.
Makes total sense. And you start talking about being able to manage your land. You've mentioned moist soil in the Grand Prairie now, and then you mentioned, private slits of woods. You talk about the Winchester Club. There's several thousand acres of private woods in Arkansas. There are still great public opportunities there. What is the secret, Jimbo, of becoming or let's say getting to where they're at. Because if you're in the Winchester Woods, you're in the Winchester Woods. You might have a couple different blinds, but is it different than being in the Biomeda and make sure that I'm pronouncing that right, Jimbo. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
You did.
Biomeda.
No, you did.
Are you waiting for the new water? Are you trying to get to where the new water is? Is that where you're going to find the mallards? My point in asking you this, Jim, is how do you scout woods? Because you can put binoculars up and see ducks over woods, but it's hard to get in a boat and actually go in there. There's laws around it. There's, legal means of getting in there at different times of the days. Is it just pretty much, Jimbo, once they're in the woods, they're in the woods and you can't beat them out of there with the fly swatter?
Yeah, yes and no. I've seen Biomeda like that. If you didn't kill them in the first 30 minutes, you wasn't going to get them because they was going to get down where people weren't. But you kind of, it's a wide open answer. So if you're hunting river system and water's coming up, you hunt that feathered edge, you hunt that new water. They always looking for bugs and acorns, and you keep in mind that all puddle duck species feed typically in 6 inches of water or less. Sometimes they'll go a little deeper, but a mallard duck, just think for conversation purposes, feeds in 6 inches of water or less. And acorns, good acorns don't float. If you're in the woods somewhere and you see acorns floating on the water, those aren't good ones. They're hollow. So they're going to be looking for that feathered edge for bugs and acorns. But now that being said, some of my best hunts ever was in waist deep water, late morning, ducks coming back from the feed, and you're finishing big bunches, and they're coming to in loafing water. Now, loafing water may be that deep, or it may be waist deep, but they're using that particular area that time of day for cover. And they may later in the year they may split off in pairs, pair bond isolation things. But typically, if I'm scouting fresh woods, I just want to get in the woods and watch. If I'm going somewhere new, of course, there's people. Sometimes there's people everywhere, but just get out of the way and get somewhere and watch and listen and see where ducks are going. And then I want to try to get under them. So on our state and federal ground here, there's times you can't get into the refuge until a certain time, or a WMA to a certain time. And you typically have to be out by a certain time. But that being said, you can pretty much do what you want to do. Some areas may have horsepower restrictions, but you can come and go as you please. But just get in there and look, and try not to get on top of somebody and just pay attention. And if you kind of got an idea what the weather's doing, or if you got a fresh push of ducks or where they may be going, you can go to that part of the woods or try to hedge your bet. Hey, I think it's going to be good over here. Let's go try this hole. And if it ain't good, go try another one. But whether I'm duck hunting or turkey hunting or goose hunting, wherever I'm at, I'm hunting today for tomorrow. Sure, I want to have a good hunt today, but I'm paying attention today for tomorrow. So even if we get them tomorrow, we may need to move. So I want to see what's going on today, thinking, hey, we need to move over there.
I love that.
Lots of gray area.
Well, it's like being a coach. I mean, you're watching the team hit today when you got a different pitcher coming on tomorrow. How are you going to approach the strike zone tomorrow, or vice versa? If you know that who's pitching tomorrow, you're telling your team, hey, watch, get ready for that kind of deal with a scouting report. Kind of that's what we're talking about is a scouting report. But there's a couple questions that come to mind when I listen to you talk. You mentioned different times of the day that you've enjoyed success. If you don't get them in the first 30 minutes, they're going to go get down, is one of your quotes. The other one was, I've had some of my best hunting, later on in mid-morning or later morning in waist deep water when they're leaving the feed and coming back to loaf. Loafing is more of a loaf pond. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to sleep there. They're just going to loaf around like a Sunday afternoon, watching football like a guy that's eating too much in his sweatpants. When you think about this question, Jimbo, how do you answer this without me sounding like I'm trying to judge people, because I'm not, so please don't take it that way. But I love the beauty and the majesty of mallard ducks. There's nothing prettier in the world, in my opinion, including the Eiffel Tower, the Colosseum in Italy, than looking up through flooded green timber in Arkansas, America, and seeing a blue sky with mallard ducks breaking down when I'm listening to Jim on the Mondo. Nothing prettier in the world. So
I'm with you.
Why do people get in there early and shoot them in the dark, Jimbo? You can only kill 4 drakes or 4 mallards, and 2 of them can be hens. You're taking a chance of not killing green when they're all the same color silhouetted against that black background. Is it fair to say that a lot of guys get in there and cut into them too early because they've been scouting, they've been in boat races off the public boat ramps, now they start coming in there, and it's like, I don't understand that part of the hunt when you could wait a little bit and let them get some color on it. And I hope I don't sound like I'm being judgmental, because I'm truly not.
No, I understand your question wholly, and I will say this: it's a multifaceted answer. So, for one, if you're talking about on public ground and people shoot them early, you try to get them while you can. If you got them, get them. And I'll admit, man, sometimes you can't tell what you're shooting at. You don't know what it is. And there's a mentality around duck hunting in this part of the world that goes by how quick you get them. You know, now it's not a race by any means. I want to enjoy the morning. You know, I want to enjoy the sun coming up. That being said, there's a lot of people, the sooner they get done, the better it is, right? That's how their perception. Other times, especially if you're hunting, keeping on the, sounds like a lot of public ground guys, they want to get there, they want to get them quick, they found them, and they want to get out of there, you know, or get there and shoot them quick and hang out all day. Private ground wise, if you're managing, they just tried to text me, the manager of Greenbrier. So if you're managing that, you want to manage your pressure too. So pressure management is such that you want to shoot them quick, get out of there, let the ducks have it the rest of the day. That's the mentality. That being said, like you mentioned, man, old morning sun getting up, breaking over top of them woods, and high bunch of mallards breaking out of a pretty blue sky. Man, them late morning hunts are great. But again, back on private ground, you're not managing that pressure. You want to let them ducks get in there and use it and be comfortable. Public ground guys are just in a hurry. You know, if you got them, you better get them, because somebody may line up and shoot your swings or whatever else. You shoot your ducks while you can. But in a perfect world, I just assume not start till about 7 and sun be up good and be, you know, enjoy the morning, enjoy what God gives us, you know, get out there and enjoy nature. Don't be in a hurry. It ain't got to be a race.
Amen.
I'm going to add two. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. If you're adding to it, go ahead, Jimbo.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. Just kind of goes along with what you just said. So one of my deals that kind of gets me a little bit is you hear people. There's a lot of people out there that I think when they want to shoot a duck, they'd like to see that duck blow up in a fireball and a big poof of smoke and hit the. And that bothers me. And I hear the term, we grind it, you know, it's a grind, or we grind it every day. You know, man, if it's that hard on you, man, find something else to do. Go find another hobby. Yeah. If you don't enjoy it, if it's a grind to you to go duck hunting, take up golf, tennis, bass fishing, deer hunting. I don't know, but I enjoy it. I get the opportunity to do something I truly love to do as a part of my vocation. I'm not saying I've not been tired back when I was guiding every day, or you're on a long road trip and you're videoing. I'm not saying that you don't get tired, but man, we ain't fighting war. We're not packing an 80-pound pack and somebody shooting at us and us shooting back. It's supposed to be fun. So enjoy it for what it is. Enjoy Mother Nature. Enjoy finishing them ducks right, breaking a high bunch of ducks out of a December blue sky, watch them throw them angel wings out and them big pretty orange feet. That's what it's about. Sure, we all like to smell of burned powder and a heavy duck strap, but there's more to it than that.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't say it better. It's poetic. Is in agreement. Would you agree, Jimbo, that there's different stages of maturity in this process? And if you had a chance to sit down with a classroom full of 18 to 25-year-old die-hard, go-get-'em mallard duck hunters that, I mean, their license plate says "get 'em," and they got the Rich and Tone sticker on the back window, and they got their jacket on and their mud boots ready. what do you say to them? Do you say, hey, look, there is going to be this mentality of, I mean, our good friend Tony Vandemore made the quote, piles make smiles famous, hashtag piles make smiles. But is it the quicker that somebody can learn that there's more to this than piles that make smiles? Is that important to you to be able to get that across? Or is it to each their own and let them all learn it on their own? Because personally, Jimbo, did you go through that phase in your duck hunting career to where you needed to stack them up?
Probably, probably. At the same time, I was fortunate to grow up in an outdoor family and parents that enjoyed the outdoors. And although, we wanted to get them, Dad was always big about pointing out this kind of tree or that kind of tree, or, stopping to watch things happen, and learning about it. So I always had I had an appreciation for that to a point. But yeah, there was a point in my life where, maybe one limit wasn't enough for the day. I'm not going to say that, but I'd like to also go back and tell these guys, or tell me at that time, look, enjoy it for what it is. Remember that it's a privilege, not a right. We may not always have them, and be sure to take it all in. Again, it's not a race. What's the old saying? It's a marathon, not a sprint. So enjoy that for what it is. And I tell those guys that, look, I know you're in a hurry. I know you want to get them. I know you want to stay bloody and sling blood and guts everywhere. I get it. But understand that the good Lord put them there for us to enjoy, and we got to take care of them. If we don't take care of that resource, it's not going to take care of us. So I want to tell guys to appreciate it for what it is. Enjoy your hunt. Play the game right. Remember, it's not about how far you shoot them or how fast your boat goes. Yeah, sure, you have an old single drake staying on top of the trees and he's not finishing, but just circling. If you square him up, straight up, take him out, I'm okay with that. But don't shoot every bunch, 2 treetops high. Try to finish them. Try to play the game for what it is. I'm not going to try to tell everybody how to hunt or how to do their thing, because there's a lot of old timers hunting in the woods. It was shooting them high. That's what they enjoyed, shooting them over the trees. I like to try to talk them into giving up. And I think that's what the game has became. We just haven't got there yet. I think there's a lot of guys haven't got there yet, if that makes sense.
Total sense.
I think folks like you and I, in what we do, we need to try to help pass that around, pass that down to them, whether it be on a TV show or podcast, or sometimes what folks will see on one of our 30-minute episodes, it's 22 minutes of footage. That's a 3 or 4 day hunt piled into 22 minutes. It looks like it happens really quick, but it's not always like that. You take the good with the bad.
And you talk about it's not a race. There's no prime really in an athlete's life if you consider yourself an athlete as a duck hunter, which I do. Okay, we might not look like athletes, but there's a lot of different things that go into success of hunting, of visualization and preparation and mental focus and being able to be consistent with a shotgun and breathing techniques. Everything you learn in athletics, if you apply it to duck hunting, you can do it. I don't like the word competition coming into it, but there is a such thing as an athlete is probably going to be out of baseball by the time he's 40. A female swimmer is probably going to be done by the time she's 32, 34, competing for world gold. I know there's certain cases that are, that don't fit into those classifications, and you might have somebody like Randy Couture win the UFC heavyweight title at 46. Who knows? But in duck hunting, Jimbo, is it safe to say that you're about 50? I've been watching RNT-V for literally, I think, 15 seasons now. This means that you were in your early 30s when you guys started this TV part of it. And I know that you've been hunting ducks before that. Do you still love it as much as you did? Do you still consider yourself in your prime? Can you get in there and mix it up with the best of them, Jim Ronquest? Are you going to be in the boat and be able to access these woods and know your routes and know what trees to stand behind depending on the sun and the shade and the shadows? You're in your prime right now. This is not, you can't get in a hurry, because even when you start to get into those 50s and 60s and 70s, I know many guys that would wear a lot of people out with their knowledge and their abilities in the duck woods.
Man, I know some guys in their mid to late 60s that getting it done, for sure. Now, you start off about the competition. I'm not a competitive hunter, and a lot of public ground in this part of the world has gotten competitive. Who gets the hole first, who has the fastest boat, and that's unfortunate. Although I get certain places you want to be, and some of these places, some of these old ancestral holes are just that, they're ancestral, and that's where people want to be. They want to be there at first light, and I get that. So I don't like the people competition aspect, but there's a lot of folks do. I don't mind it, but I don't want to get up there and mix it up with folks. It's not a competition, but a lot of folks, again, they want to figure out, hey, I want to beat Jimbo and them here. I want to get in front of these guys or whatever. That's not me. My competition is between me and them. Can I talk them into giving up? Can I get myself positioned where they want to be? Because there's only two places you can kill them. One's where they're at, and the other one is someplace they don't mind coming to. So you got to find one of those two spots. Now, then you got the people aspect. And again, I'm not out there competing against other duck hunters. I'm trying to finish ducks. So you might say that's competitive if two groups are calling at them, but I don't want to be that close to somebody where that matters. So it's between me and the ducks. So in that respect, yeah, I still can get out there and do all right. Now, I'm not much for sleeping in a boat all night anymore. I kind of like a warm bed, but still getting around pretty good anyway.
And do you think that, as far as I understand the human body, but as far as your mind goes and your ability to picture a duck hunt and then execute a duck hunt, it doesn't get old though, right? You're still excited today as you ever were?
Oh man, yeah, I didn't finish that part of your question, but yes, I look forward to duck season just like everybody else does. Fortunately, we get to start sooner. And man, I can be on the road and be coming up opening day here at home and think, man, what's going on home? I can't wait to get back, see what's going on. Or if it's, say you felt we just got a good push of ducks and we're fixing to have some good weather, just being able to know it, hey, it might be good, but we're going to have a northwest wind at 15 in the morning, the sun's going to shine, water's coming up. I'll run the hole, meet y'all in the woods, whatever. I still look forward to that. I certainly look forward to that.
When you start thinking about Arkansas, I could practice my duck calling where I sit right now. And I'd say, man, I sound pretty good. And then when I get to Arkansas, every 8-year-old girl and boy would mop me up. Like literally. It is amazing how many good duck callers come out of this area, from Jonesboro down the Grand Prairie all the way over to Little Rock. It's amazing. All the way down the Louisiana line, there's been good duck callers out of Louisiana. Don't get me wrong. Even Iowa had some. There's been me and several from the state of Iowa. But Arkansas is the land of the duck callers, in my opinion. And the reason that I think this, Jimbo, and you tell me if I'm onto something or not, but I feel like the duck hunting now in Arkansas is way more audio based and driven than somewhere where you got a huge spread out on the Missouri River and they can see it from a mile away as they approach. It's hard to see those decoys in that dark timber until they're right down over them. But those ducks, in my opinion, I know that there's a lot of hereditary or ancestral holes in the area, but I feel that the reason that duck callers are so good in the state of Arkansas is because if you don't sound like a duck, you're not going to kill them from the time you're 12 until the time you retire at 70 years old. They're coming to ducky mallard sounds, and the guys that have created those big rafts and calling and getting after them, I think that's why duck calling's so good there. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. And you're definitely on the right track. I'll add to that. And I even, I've been a past world champion duck caller and the contest world's been good to me. The best duck call, that being said, the very best duck callers I've ever heard have just been duck hunters. I'm not saying not all of them have been, there've been some really good contest guys too, but to your point, they're just really good callers of ducks. They're really good at blowing a duck call, really good at reading ducks. And a lot of it comes from growing up in the woods because it is more audio, trolling. We call that trolling. Say you and I are hunting and it's, up in the morning and slowed down. We get to blowing. back and forth. We call that trolling, just blowing loud. Bap, 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 bap. My buddies and I will do that for about 5 minutes, and then we'll stop. And more times than not, there'll be some ducks come sailing across you, coming looking, coming to that sound. So yes, you're 100% correct.
Is it visual at all, or do you need decoys in the trees? Do you need decoys in the trees?
Man, I've had some big hunts without them, no doubt. But it all depends on how big a hole you're hunting. If you're hunting a great big, like a logging deck that's really big, where they piled up logs, and you can think of landing a helicopter big. Yes, a big spread of decoys works there, just like any place else you'd use them. If you're just hunting a blowdown, 2 decoys on a jerk cord is probably plenty. Just something, put some movement on the water. We did some drone footage this year of a bunch of ducks in the woods late when leaves are off the trees, or my buddies that count. You'd be surprised when the leaves are off the trees how well you can see in those woods. And what you see first is that water movement. You see that water movement, and you see why a jerk cord is so important. But you key off that water movement. Then once you start looking, you start seeing ducks pretty easy. Them black stripes down them Drake's back, and then that gray on each side of it, man, that jumps. So it's more visual than you probably think it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm starting to learn from your answer is, I guess, the drone footage that I've used, maybe we've been too high. Do you think it has to do with something at the distance the duck is up in the sky? As they descend more, they're going to see a little bit better? Well,
even height. You've flown a lot. Once you get above the trees, you see pretty good. You can see down in them pretty good, especially once the leaves get off the trees, mid-December here. So you can see through there pretty dang well. And them woods are open. You think how open they are, man, you can see a long way through the woods. And you take water rippling and you put a duck, trading ducks pretty high, traveling, they got a good vantage point. You think about being up on top of a roof looking down, how much better your vision is. So yeah, they can see in there pretty good. And they see a water movement, hit on the call, it all kind of comes together.
Jimbo, do you wish with your management knowledge of timber holes and duck property that you could invent a tree that never lost its leaves? Would you rather hunt with trees with leaves on them all the time?
Man, that's a good one. I never thought about that. Some of the prettiest hunts are, early when the leaves are still on the trees, man. That's just cool looking. Just all that combination. But I don't necessarily think I would want leaves on the trees. You can hide better. If it's a hiding deal, yes. When trees get naked, it's hard to stay hid sometimes, especially if it's cloudy. But no, not necessarily. I mean, it'd be great if you did, but then the tree's got to be able to do its yearly thing too. So
I was referring mainly to the hide. It's just so much easier to hide underneath that canopy and get them tight.
Yes, 100%.
When you talked about, you made reference to a jerk string. You're also very known in my years since the bout. I remember the day like it was yesterday, but I don't remember the location, but the year was 2005. It was an Avery Outdoors waterfowlers kind of round table and team waterfowl. You kind of coined this deal that I've always referred back to in my duck hunting career, which I think is so underrated with the jerk string and the ability to create the Jim Ronquest chocolate milk effect. You were the first one that ever told me you got to get that water looking like chocolate milk. And as I got into duck hunting more, I started to see that ducks never quit moving. Even when they're sleeping, they're kicking their feet a little bit to stay balanced unless they're up on dry land. But when they're in the water, they're flapping their wings, they're moving their feet, they're dunking their head underneath it. Those sediments are always getting stirred up. Why is it important? Now, go back to what you just said from that vantage point when a duck's looking down there. The darker and the murkier and the muddier the water is more realistic from that vantage point of a bird's eye view?
Man, there's several things there, Chad. One, if it's shallow water, if you, again, back to flying, you can see where ducks have been using, especially in a shallow flooded field where ducks or geese have been at. You can see the edge where they quit using. I think that's something they key on. They key on that line. Sometimes you're going to hunt places where ducks can't keep it muddy, but you do. And here's where you're getting a problem hunting in the woods, standing against a tree. It's not as bad early in the season when leaves are on the trees. It's not near as bad when the sun's shining. But you get late in the year and you're standing on the tree, there'll be a mud ring. Or even if you're hunting a buckbrush hole or whatever it may be, if you're not in a blind, if you're standing out there, where you stand at, you're going to make, you can't be still either, right? You're always moving your feet. So there's going to be mud around you. And where everybody's standing, there's a ring of mud. Out here in the middle of the hole, it's clear where the decoys are. That doesn't make sense to a duck. I think around here, when ducks get pressured a lot on public ground, I think they key on that. They go, oh, crap, we're about to get shot at. So I think that's part of it there. It's a concealment issue. It's also, I think ducks key on that, knowing there's been ducks in there feeding, they're eating, they're doing whatever. That looks natural. It's not clear. And you take that really clear water, I think them ducks key off that. Like a lot of times hunting out west or Nebraska, I think we was in Colorado a few years ago on the Arkansas River, and we had a pile of ducks, but they wouldn't finish. Man, they'd line up just right. They'd start to get in, they'd pick up and slide off. And I've been trying to figure out to this day what it was, and the best I can figure, it was that clear water, shallow water. They could see the string, see the weight, see whatever. They were keying off the decoy, something off the decoys not being natural. So back to hunting around here, you want to keep your water muddy. You know, if water's muddy, ducks use it. You get the water clear up in the woods, a lot of times they'll quit using it. Now, there's so many variables. I could be here all day talking about variables. So if you're hunting current in a river, you know, moving water, that's going to carry all them sediments past you. If you're in a backwater scenario, water's going to be pretty still. You can keep that water muddy. And ducks use all of it. You just got to make it look and sound as natural as you can. First thing is you got to either be where they've been using every day or someplace they don't mind coming to.
Don't mind coming to. That makes so much sense, though, now to be picturing myself as a group of ducks, a flock of mallards looking down and seeing those muddy rings around the trees. And they're like, well, that's where the ducks are. And then they're keying in on that. And then that's how they're spotting you, too, because you got all these human beings standing there, you know, not necessarily moving or knowing when to move at the right times. Or, I mean, that makes so much sense that you're giving them that visual of 5 or 6 to 8 rings of different hunters around these trees. That's crazy to think like that, but it makes total sense.
Yeah, if you can keep everything around you muddy, that's good. And where you get the problem is, you know, that sediment settles. So if you're having a good morning, it's better because, you know, people are moving, picking up ducks, going after ducks, or dogs working, or whatever. You're keeping things stirred up. It gets slow. You stand there, you're shooting a bull, you're drinking a cup of coffee. Somebody broke out a stick of deer sausage, and then the only place is muddy is right where you're standing, and out where the decoys are, where you want your ducks to light, it's clear and clean. So that looks unnatural to them, and I think they key on that.
Before I move on to the last part of our podcast with some competition questions, give me the Jim Ronquest playbook, and in that playbook, there's a chapter on here's what I want the weather to look like. This is the way I want the sky. This is what I want the temperature. This is what time of year I want it to be. Give me an idea of the perfect duck hunting day for Jim Ronquest.
Oh, man. Yeah. Somewhere during the holidays between Christmas and New Year's, mid-20s, all the fields froze, good water in the bottoms, wake up to a starry sky and a southwest wind about 10, maybe going to 15 during the day, right after a big cold front.
Now, the southwest wind would be my question. Why the southwest wind in the part of the world? Are you in Arkansas in the timber on this hunt?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in my home turf.
Why area. Southwest wind?
Concealment. Sun's behind you.
Now, you start thinking about that part of duck hunting. The sun's going to come up in the east, but a lot of people would think that, well, I want to be on the east side of the hole. Why would you say to a new duck hunter, get on the southwest side of the hole?
Depends on the size of the hole. So you brought up another good point, and it's another one of them big variables in duck hunting, right?
Yep.
So if it's a really small spot, I just get on the south side of it, and that's typically where I'd stay. I wouldn't necessarily go to the southwest side unless it was a really, really big gap that I was hunting, or there was a natural chute for that southwest wind. I like a southwest wind because you get the sun behind you pretty quick. Sun's going, when it comes up over here to the east, as it comes around pretty quick, you can use them shadows to your advantage and not be looking into it, right? So if we're just hunting a small gap, and there's a pretty good runway for any kind of a south wind, I just look due north. I like that little bit of west in it because it makes them have to come around stuff, and it makes you can kind of quarter off of them where they're not looking right at you as much. So think of that as a quarter wind. So say as I'm looking at this computer screen, to my left is west, or looks backwards to you, I know. So if it winds out of the southwest, it's coming across me like this. I got the sun coming around here. When ducks finish, they're looking out there. So that's kind of my idea of it, but any kind of a south wind, I guess, to make that a little more general, any kind of a south wind. Northwest wind's not bad either. Again, if it's a small enough hole, I still stay off, keep the sun out of my face if I can. Northwest winds tend to lead to big pushes of ducks also, but that southwest wind, you can just use the sun to hide so much better.
Jimbo, you said that you look up and there's stars of the sky, but that's not a ducky day. From what I've been told all over California and Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, I want a low ceiling. I want a stormy day. I want it to be gray out, because that seems to be the people think is a ducky day. When I started going to Arkansas, I learned about the importance of sunshine and what it does to ducks. They act like mallard ducks when the sun's shining. I've learned that from guys like you, guys like Keith Allen, Christian Curtis, that say that's a mallard duck's day. That's when they're going to act ducky or mallardly. If you're out in John Stevens, who we're going to talk about in a second, in his daddy's farm or John's farm in the rice field, do you still want sunshine, Jim? Can you kill them in a rice field in sunshine, or is that when you want that quote unquote ducky day of the low ceiling and the storm coming in?
You want both, depends on the time of day you're there. I like sunshine in rice field too. Midday, early afternoon hunts with a south wind in the rice field where you can leave that pit open about that far. They don't ever look down in there and see you, and they'll finish up right and tight to that pit. Love it. That being said, early morning, big front coming, storm coming, cold front behind it. Yeah, that's fun too. That's when you'll want to be in the field. Maybe even more so in the woods. I don't know. But all of that works. But just sunshine, I hear so many people when I was in the guide business, man, we've been praying for rain ever since we booked the hunt. We'd be cloudy and nasty. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for. Ducks will use all those different habitat types in the sun. Now, talking to a lot of people in other parts of the country, I get they want that low ceiling, those big winds, because it keeps ducks low, pushes them to places that they hunt probably. And there's times where light rain is wonderful. Don't want to hunt in a heavy rain or downpour or thunderstorm, but sometimes a light to moderate rain, ducks will start finishing good. It'll kind of make them pay attention. Snow is another one. Snow and sleet, man, it'll make them stupid. But day in, day out, it's just hard to beat that sunshine. Now, an extended high pressure system, bright moon, them days where you can still see the moon at 10:30, 11 o'clock during the day. For whatever reason, when that scenario happens, it's tough. You'll get them early, but sometimes you don't get them late mid-morning. And it just makes a difference.
High pressure systems.
Here's something I've noticed the past couple of years. My buddy Jake Latondras at Prairie Rock Outfitters and I were just talking about this the other day. Deer hunters, especially, talking about the red moon and the super moon. I wonder if you've noticed it out west, like all the cool spots you hunt, Idaho and Washington and all that. You notice ducks becoming more nocturnal even when they're not heavily pressured in that time frame?
Yep, 100%.
I think there's something to that super moon deal. Jake and I was talking this past year. I don't know where you were mid-December when that sucker hit. But they had a pile of ducks out on the Platte. I mean, they had a good one. He said, look, it's what we got, but they're absolutely not doing nothing till dark. And they're not doing anything during the day. They're shooting handful here and there, but they were on the struggle bus. And a lot of other people were too. North Missouri had some tough times. You know, key areas of the country where a lot of good duck hunting was having some tough times. And people are saying it's pressure. People are saying it's old ducks. And I think that's a part of it. We haven't had a good hatch in a couple of years. But I wonder for something to that moon phase changing ducks. And, I've called myself paying attention for a long time. Most hunters observe things like that. But I don't know. It just seems like they've gotten worse, and I can't put my finger on it. Even in places that aren't pressured. I get it around here, or some places right out of St. Louis, Missouri, near the confluence of the Mississippi, Missouri River. There's some old time duck clubs there. There's a lot of pressure in one spot. I get why those areas ducks get nocturnal, but some of the places like you get to hunt on the Snake and western Nebraska on the Platte, there's duck hunters, and there's always been duck hunters there, but it's not as heavily pressured as like this part of the world. And I wonder why they're getting so nocturnal.
Well, I saw it. I remember exactly where I was when the phase hit that you're talking about, and we were in the same position with geese as well. We had a huge influx of specks, and we were on them. I mean, they were in a position to where we could get on them daily, and get good flocks finishing, and they just quit. They quit working at sun, during the day when there was the hours where the hunters were out there. They were not coming out until, I'm talking 5 minutes after legal shooting hours. And you would see huge groups of specks going into the flooded rice. It was kind of that time where they were getting ready to transition from the wet rice into the dry rice. And they were coming out and comfortable as heck. And I was thinking, man, they're going to feed fast tonight. No, we would stop and listen to them, and it would be pitch black, and they would be out there in those rice fields feeding like there was no tomorrow. So they can navigate no problem when that moon is in that phase.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, think about you. Man, best time to run, if I've got a long boat ride up the river and it's a full moon, I turn the lights off because I can see better.
Yeah,
I can see what's on the water better even. And I don't know if it's a vision thing or if it's just, something to do with that moon phase. Those moon calendars messes it up. Excuse me, I'm looking down. I got to return a text here.
You're fine. I know that business doesn't stop for Jim Ronquest. Life doesn't stop. When you start thinking about, this is kind of a two-sided question, Jimbo, because I know that you've made a lot of friends in this industry. And I also know that you have hunted in a lot of different locations in this country and Canada, other places probably. But you also do hold the place where you sit right now of the Grand Prairie of Arkansas very sacred. Mm-hmm. If you had it your way, would you stop flooded corn north of you, all places? Is it a normal and traditional farming practice? And why is it even an argument and always kind of where the finger gets pointed when duck seasons don't go the way that locals in Louisiana and Arkansas and other places in that region think that the duck season should be going? Because do you agree that it's kind of the one that gets the finger pointed at it the fastest right now?
Oh, yeah. And yes, it does. And it's unwarranted. People have been flooding corn for ducks for a long time. There wasn't no change in the regulations or anything. Now, you can't go mow it down and flood it and hunt over it, but you can hunt over standing flooded corn. And ducks use it for sure. But I'll answer that with, so I got two buddies in the commercial hunting business in the Central Flyway. One's in Nebraska, the other one's in Kansas. And they talk all the time. And the one in Kansas gives the one in Nebraska a hard time about, man, give me your ducks. How many flooded cornfields you see in Nebraska?
Have I seen? I've never seen one, I don't think.
I hadn't either, and I've traveled it a good bit. So everybody wants to point fingers at food, or they're planting food or feeding them or whatnot. That's not the issue. I see how people think it's the issue, and I can understand where, people here look at Missouri, which holds a lot of ducks, always has held a lot of ducks. but there's a lot of other factors in there too. It's not just food. If you think about that, moist soil will feed more ducks longer than corn will. It's not saying they won't wear a cornfield out for hot foods. I mean, gosh, it's like Snickers bars, we all love them. They want those carbs, but they need that other stuff also. They need those moist soil areas. They need acorns. I've killed ducks in Missouri on small water, full of acorns, where they'd hit the water and they've walked up on dry ground to eat acorns. So as people try to increase habitat, we're helping the ducks out. I think a lot of it, the past few years, goes back to climate. And I don't want to be the global warming guy cheerleader either. I don't know if from some kind of crazy long cycle or truly is global warming, but whatever it is, things have changed. So I don't think it's fair to point it at flooded corn, no.
But in reality, what my question, you made reference earlier about how you could go on forever on variables. This is a discussion that could be talked about for weeks and weeks with several different individuals sitting around a big boardroom, right?
And look here, how many different opinions you going to get?
So many.
It'd be amazing. And what you and I say and do is just what we see. But I don't think it's fair to point it at flooding corn or habitat management. The better job you can do on habitat is good for ducks, period. I think if weather patterns would come back around, I think you'd see different migrations.
Before I ask that, I want to ask one more question. Please just tell me, just real quick, your opinion on Tony Vandemore, the McCauley's Habitat Flats, and how awesome have they built in the last 15 years, and how cool was it to see this come into fruition as a vision to implementing it and executing this plan that they had and what it's turned out to be today. How unbelievable has Habitat Flats become, Jimbo?
Oh, it's pretty cool, man. And of course, being friends with Aaron and Tony, and being up there in the early days, and seeing it now, it's really cool. The habitat is excellent. They do a great job managing. It's just cool to go see it. And that whole area up there is another kind of hot spot here. It's kind of become one of my second favorite areas in the country to hunt because there is a lot of diversity. They don't have the big tracts of woods like we have here, but there are woods up there. Ducks used to hit those woods. They cleared a long time ago, but they'll hit those little ponds up in the woods, and you get a woods-like feeling experience. They're really good. They've done Tony and Ira and Aaron and Dan also. They've done a great job on taking pressure off their food, providing refuge and rest areas, and hunting, learning the way ducks are traveling, and hunting areas that they can put more pressure on and stay underneath ducks. Back to earlier when I said there's two places you can kill them. One's where they don't mind coming to, or another place is right where they're at. Say they're feeding in a field, and they're feeding that field, and you're there every morning. Well, that puts a lot of pressure on them. If you're hunting in a spot they don't mind coming to, and as long as you're underneath them and you can talk them into giving up, you can put more pressure on those areas. You can hunt those ducks more. Now, you can shift that line if you're not careful, but you put more pressure on them. And they've done a great job setting up, hunting the little ponds in the woods around the rest areas in different parts of that area up there. Just done a fantastic job putting it all together.
Love it. I get to go there this year. The rumor has it.
Oh, good.
The rumor. Thank you, Jimbo. The rumor also has it that, I don't know if people are going to take me serious on this, but the rumor has it that the governor of South Dakota has made contact with Jim Ronquest to create a Mount Rushmore of competition duck callers and a Mount Rushmore of hunting duck callers in the state of Arkansas. Rumor has it. Don't know if this is true or not. Don't know if you've ever talked to the governor of our fine state of South Dakota. But Jimbo.
I would like to.
Me too. Who is going on the Mount Rushmore of competition duck callers? And I'm talking Main Street duck callers of the World Championships held in Stuttgart every Thanksgiving weekend. Who's on that of all time? Who is on Jim Ronquest's Mount Rushmore of competition duck callers. It's Main Street Stuttgart style world championship, not meat calling, not live duck, competition duck callers. Who is on that Mount Rushmore?
Cool. Okay. Before I answer that question, I got a comment to Miss Christy Noem, governor of South Dakota. I will go on record with this publicly that I even told my wife. My wife always told me if George Strait come around that she was gone.
Hall pass time.
Yeah. If Christy Noem comes around and wants me to take her duck hunting, I'm gone. I'm going with it.
I bet you she'd take you up on it.
I don't know how in the world you even picked her out of that. Almost like you had inside information.
She's my favorite. She's my favorite.
She is awesome, man. She was actually, and Daniel, you probably know Daniel, my good friend, almost like a son. Hang on a second. But he said she was awesome.
She seems like she would be a freaking blast to hunt with.
Oh, I think so. And she's pretty. She likes to hunt. She likes the outdoors. Mm-hmm. She just seems like a pretty cool gal. And I like the way she thinks.
Me too.
But that's another. My Mount Rushmore of contest callers. Golly dang. That's a tough one.
Well, I've always had questions about that to you because you have to compete against them. But there's got to be, you did at one time, but like, let's take John, for example. Is he the best of all time or is he make your Mount Rushmore?
Oh, yes. He certainly makes my Mount Rushmore. But there's several of those guys and there's differences in them. You take some of the three-timers, for sure you got to put John Stevens, Trey Crawford on there. Then for them next two, it starts getting tough, man, because there's several good ones that are deserving. I can think of more than 4 people deserving to be there for a variety of reasons. Man, it'd be tough. It'd be hard not to put Barney Califf up there. Even though Bernie Boyle, unfortunately, is no longer with us, not everybody liked Bernie's sound, but Bernie Boyle, wherever you went, you had better pull your boots on because he had something about the way he blew scored with everybody. People liked him. And it wasn't super ducky. It wasn't super anything except that it flowed very well and it scored well everywhere he went. So, you could argue him. Of course, I said Barney Califf, even though come from a very different philosophical contest calling background as John did, you can't help if you listen to Barney when he was right. When he won in 99, I second. He got me by 2 points or a point. And when I listen back, I thought, man, if I'd done this a little better, I might tie him. But when you listen to Barney, it's very creative. You tell he's a duck hunter. And I'm gonna come back around to your question, but there's something there that deserves a mention from me. There's a lot of contest callers that are very mechanical. To me, the truly great ones are the ones that you can tell they're duck hunters. You can hear them working ducks in their routine. You can, even though it's Main Street, you can still hear them working a bunch of ducks in their routine. Some guys can't get that across. And John and I have talked about that several times. I can't put my finger on what it is, but there's a feel, a sound, or something you get that you can tell that person's calling ducks and not just blowing a routine. So that comes back to my Mount Rushmore. The folks who would be on my Mount Rushmore would be people that had that ability.
Okay, so what was John's ability, if you broke down his routine, that made him sound like you knew he was working ducks? And obviously that's probably in the woods because that's where John Stevens has mainly hunted his whole life. But did he have that, or was John Stevens considered a technical competition caller?
He was one that walked the line pretty much, but you could tell John was a duck hunter. But John, very technical because John's very creative. You think all the stuff around RNT and the tap room. John's a very creative individual. So part of putting together a contest routine was his creativity, along with his duck hunting. So I think a place you put it is you hear it in the hail call, you hear it in his comeback, in his feed, and how he changes the flow up. He's not full wide open, super fast all the way through. He slows down, he backs off, doesn't try to be super loud all the way through, paints a picture, lets off and that's the idea of the routine, right? The fifth thing of the five things you scored upon in a Main Street contest is hail call, feed call, comeback call, lonesome hen or mating call. And the fifth thing is the overall routine, which is typically what everybody scores on. You don't write down a score for each one of those parts. You got to keep them in your mind. Each part is equal. However, how you put it together, I think wins. But you got to keep what you have to keep in there, right? But John had an ability to paint that picture, and there's a lot of guys that they wide open from start to finish, and they don't back off the call. And I think showing that finesse goes a long way. Trey Crawford was excellent at it. Barney was excellent at it. There's some, Bernie, although Bernie was, he just had a feel and a flow that people liked.
So if you had to wake up tomorrow morning and you're competing in the Champion of Champions, you guys are all in that prime time of your calling career. It comes down to the finals, and Jim Ronquest is in the finals. There's a call-off. Who do you want it to be? I know that you could beat anybody on any given day, but who would you have the most confidence in securing this Champion of Champions championship victory? You have you have to choose from John Stevens, John Stevens, Trey Crawford, or Brad Allen. You haven't mentioned Brad Allen yet, but Brad Allen has won the world several times. What made three times is he technical? And which one of those three would you feel the most confidence in raising that trophy after the judges made their final decision?
Oh man, that's almost a loaded question right there, bro. That almost gets
you're not going to be able to go to lunch in Arkansas for a while, Jimbo.
Yeah, that's a tough one right there, bud. Man, that's almost unfair. That's like got to throw somebody under the bus on that.
Can you beat John Stevens? Have you beat John Stevens before?
I have, yes.
There you go.
Yes, a couple U.S. Open trophies, for sure.
Wow, what an accomplishment! I feel like John is is on the Mount Rushmore for sure. I feel like John's got to be there.
Most definitely. I mean, not even a question about it. Him and Trey for sure. I guess in Brad, man, I did a podcast with Brad last year, and he gave me the greatest compliment, and he said that even when he wasn't using our call. He said when I was blowing good, he said that the thoughts were, and this was probably one of the finest compliments I've ever gotten from other contest guys, is that humbled me. He said, man, one time you could ask anybody who they thought the best was, and they'd ask me, they mentioned me. Well, I never thought that, but I appreciate it. But that was very kind of him to say so. And Brad has such a unique sound. You'd have to have your boots pulled on pretty good and have your judges to beat him, because you might put Brad on that Mount Rushmore too, because he won it 3 back to back, and he's so much power, just unbelievable power on top. My stronger point would have been on the bottom, and that's the only thing I think I could get him if I was in my prime and still on top of it and still practiced up. Whereas Trey and John and I would have been more similar in the bottom. It'd been harder to separate from. But it'd been tough. It'd be tough with any of them guys, man. I just tell you. Gosh, I don't know. I guess because of that, I would think I might have a little more bottom than to offset being close on top, maybe. But that's a stretch, man. Brad come in here and slap me in the head in a minute. But I think that's the way I'd have to go. That is everybody in their prime on top of their game.
I'd pay to see it. I'd pay to see it. I'd pay to watch that contest.
Man, I don't know if I'd like to turn back that clock. I know that.
I need to put something like that. I need to put something like that together where the payday's big enough to get you all back in the practice room. Jimbo, a little technical difficulty. I guess that's small town America, yeah? Stuttgart, like Wi-Fi, a little issue down there or what?
Man, that's Arkansas. I've been places around the country that are just as rural as we are that have high speed fiber optic. But we don't, although it's coming down the highway. So I hope to be able to get it at my house eventually.
Was it storming there yesterday? I heard there was a bunch of rain and the rivers are almost out.
The rivers are all out. There's some rain. Pretty good storms went west of us, southwest of us, and then they kind of went north and didn't get us. We've been lucky. Chance of rain today. I think they're talking. I got one of the messages on my phone said chance of severe weather in your area, kind of deal.
So where we left off is the differences in some of the competition callers. When you were
we was talking about I remember now.
When you were at your peak, Jim, and I know that you're still an unbelievable caller, so I don't want to make it sound like you've forgotten how to blow a duck call. But when you win the Worlds, do you get nervous at that time in your career still after all the U.S. Open victories, the regional victories? Do you go on Main Street in Stuttgart, pretty much your hometown? Do you get nervous?
Yes, I think you got to be a little nervous. If it's controlled, it's even better. Nerves and adrenaline give you a little extra something, sometimes, especially if you can control it. That being said, I remember the first time I blew in the world. This is pretty funny. I wasn't a bit nervous at all because I knew they was going to use my rear end for the broom to sweep up the stage with after the contest, right? So I'm blowing along there, and all of a sudden I realized, hey, man, I'm blowing what I want to blow. I think I'm doing pretty good. As soon as I thought I was doing pretty good, my knees went to jelly, and I squawked. And after contest, first round, I got kicked out. Butch come found me, took that another finger and got my chest. And if you wouldn't have squawked, and he gave me a pretty good first-rate butt chewing right then. But after that, for a while, I got nervous. When I started realizing I could be competitive, then I got nervous.
That makes total sense to me because once you have the confidence that you're in the game, then those nerves start to kick in a little bit because you know that you've made it. You know that you're in the game, so you're kind of prepared to compete. Whereas before, like when I would go to Stuttgart, I knew dang well when I got off the plane in Little Rock that I would be getting right back on that plane with no trophy, no check, nothing except maybe the welcoming package, right? A funny story about me blowing in the Worlds was my first time. I was on deck and John Stevens was the caller before me. And if anybody knows anything about competition calling, I'm standing out there and it raises the game to where those judges are going to hear that routine and how solid the world champion John Stevens is. And then I'm going to get up there and sound like probably like an immature green-winged teal and get laughed off the stage where the stakes are high, right? Like he goes out there and the judges are like, oh, there's some good callers in this contest. Then they hear me and they're like, that's not one of them. Whereas if I would have been on my A game, like if I was a good duck caller competitively, I could have scored well if I would have matched up to John because he's scoring really well. The judges would have scored me somewhere in there. So like if Jim Ronquest or Trey Crawford or somebody scores them, or follows John Stevens, they have a chance to get a pretty good score, right? Is that your mindset?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you follow a good caller and blow good, they're going to kind of help carry you along. Even they may have been technically a little better, maybe if you listen to them in the third round or a call off, you might separate them by a point. But man, if it's a first round and you're following John and he blows clean and you blow clean, you're probably going to score within a point of it.
Yeah, as opposed to having if you're following me, if Jim Ronquest is following me in the first round, the judges might be like, well, wait a minute, we're going to put him somewhere right here in the middle because we know that there's going to be, we heard the worst. Jim might be in the middle, and now there might be somebody even better than what Jim just did.
Exactly. And that's why, in a contest, whether it be a duck calling contest, goose calling, turkey calling, it doesn't matter. The luck of that draw, where you fall in line and who you blow in front of and behind makes a difference, especially in the first round. That said, everybody's worried about going first. And I don't remember my numbers in the world the year I won, but I do remember some regionals that I won blowing first in the third round and being nervous about that. But if it's the third round and you come out there and you unleash the hounds and blow good and clean, everybody's got to match up to you. And at that point, it changes things up. It changes the dynamic a little bit.
So where does that leave you, Jim Ronquest, in your calling career? You have not won the Champion of Champions yet, I don't believe. Is that an option? Will you get back on the practice train to compete in that?
You know, I think that everybody's asking me that. Everybody asked me that last year. And then with COVID, you got to put the asterisk on 2020 because they didn't have the Wings Over Prairie Festival. So we'll basically have the 2020 Champion of Champions this year, and everybody's asking that. And I haven't made up my mind yet. I still like to blow duck calls. I enjoy it. I don't know if I can get the mindset to train that hard, you know. And I know it sounds funny to people who may be listening to this and think, man, it's blowing a duck call. What do you mean train? I mean practice. You know, it's not like you're necessarily lifting weights, but it helps to do a bunch of walking. It helps to blow a lot and get things back, and then start dialing in, you know. Start working it out, starting to build a routine, or blow what you used to blow, whatever it may be. I've been out of it long enough. It would take a minute to get started again. Whereas if you won a regional in February and you blow some, well, you come right back around pretty quick. But it would take a minute for me to get my timing back and get all that going again. Not making excuses, but that's part of it. You know, it's your timing's got to be right. You got to put it together and build it. But it's fun, right? So might be a good reason to not drink so much and hang out and shop at night and practice again.
This is kind of where my questions were leading. Before we get into that last comment you made, if you do decide to do this in November of 2021 in Stuttgart for the Champion of Champions, which you said was the 2021 with an asterisk because of COVID, do you use the same call with a new reader and just at least a new cork that you won the Worlds with, or do you and Johnny go to the drawing board and cut up a new call and get a brand new piece for you to go on stage with?
I think if I blow in the Champions this year, I'm going to go to the drawing board. You know, I might use my old one that I won with to kind of start getting back in shape, but I think I'd go back to the drawing board and come up with something. Something new, something different, you know, something that fits you, something I like. Might be a good reason for us to do an MVP too.
Yeah, there you go. I like that idea. You mentioned the man just a couple minutes ago, putting his finger in your chest. Butch Rickenbach, responsible for so many great duck callers, lessons, mechanics, many hundreds and thousands of hours spent teaching the youth, the teenagers, the young adults, the Jim Ronquest, future world champions, John Stevens. Like I probably couldn't even name. I know I couldn't name them all. I don't even know if you could, but there's a lot of them.
There's a bunch, especially when you start adding in junior, intermediate, and women's world champions that Butch helped coach along. The list is long, very long.
Personally, in your heart, Jim Ronquest, do you think that picking up a duck call and practicing and getting that fire and that competitive edge back to compete and already be able to tell me right now on this show, yes, I'm going to compete in November? Would it be easier if Butch was sitting in that front room and you knew that he was watching and listening and his boy, his student of the game, his friend more than anything is going to win the Champion of Champions this year? Would it be easier for you?
Yes. Yes, it would. He was such a good coach, you know, and he coached everybody, but he was such a good coach. He understood duck calling at a different level, I think, than a lot of folks do. Now, he was a unique individual as a human, great guy, but unique. But he studied duck calling. He kind of knew how to coach you into what fit how you blew, if that makes any sense. He could take somebody and go, he don't do that so well, but here's the strong points. So let's build on that and find ways to tie that together. And then he'd give you some ideas, and you just go do it on your own. So in that sense, Butch was very creative, at helping to put together routines. And for not being much of a duck hunter at all, he hunted some. We got to take him some. That's pretty fun. But he understood, like I was talking earlier, and about telling the difference between some duck callers, and you can hear him working ducks in a contest routine. Butch was able to build that in there for a guy that didn't hunt a lot. And I think he got that by hanging around a lot of really good duck hunters that come in the shop that weren't necessarily contest guys, but were really good duck hunters and duck callers. Ronnie Wright, Ronnie Wright, Trey Bover, they loved the duck hunt. And of course, good callers. And then other people, Bud McCullum, just as you said earlier, man, we've got a lot of really good duck callers around that don't care about a contest, but he knew how to apply that. And I think that was a lot of Butch's strengths, and kids loved him.
Did he have a musical background that he could also go into a musical room and teach somebody how to blow a saxophone or another wood and reed instrument? No, he didn't. He just understood duck calling and the mechanics of the body and the science of the air.
Of course, Chick, of course, he studied under Chick Majors, Dixie Matter Duck Calls, and Miss Sophie. And I never knew them, but in talking to people, they kind of said the same thing about them. So that probably passed on to Butch. But, some of that, like you mentioned, music instruments, people that play music are very talented. So maybe that's how he applied his musical talents, or whatever. I remember he asked me one time, or I asked him one time, I kind of got to blowing. I'd won a few regionals and made the third round in the world, might have had a top 10 finish, but hadn't bumped over that edge. There's an edge there that I think you kind of push through to get to. And I asked Butch, I said, ask him, I was kind of feeling kind of cocky. I said, man, where do I fit in? Where do I fit in the whole realm of things? So I got a shot at it. He said, about 10, 12 more years, you'll figure it out. and what was funny is he wasn't way off the mark there. It took a minute, but he was brutally honest about stuff like that. But that's also what drove you. And I remember the old shop, Johnny, me, all of us being in there. You'd go in that back room in the summertime. He'd turn the air conditioner off and shut the door. And he'd say, all right, don't come out of there till you're soaking wet. And you'd take a break and try to get you in. He'd come in there and he'd swat you with something. You get to blowing again, or you just quit and go home. But then you'd been shamed so hard you'd never be back in the shop. Fun stuff like that, lots of times.
Lots of fun in that shop. You mentioned the shop. Rich and Tone is by far, hands down, the unanimous, undisputed king of duck call brands and companies of all times. Always will be. There will probably never be a close second. And I know that Rick has done a great job with Echo. They have champions. I know that, Wendell Carlson built some great calls. I know that there's several good call makers. But nobody has done what Rich and Tone has done in so many aspects of the game when it comes to marketing, quality, customer service, atmosphere, culture, the shop. Is it the same, Jimbo? We know what happened a couple years ago with the fire. Mm-hmm. I remember times after the World Championships or in August over one of Mac's Fall Fest days, just, camaraderie. And I remember going to the drive-up liquor store and buying you a bottle of Jim Beam with my friends and saying, Jimbo, congratulations. And we all signed it for you. We brought it to the shop and you opened it and let us have a drink with you. And is it the same, Jimbo? I know that we're all getting older. I know that that's life. But is it the same there? Is it fun? Is the culture the same at Rich and Tone? Because it is easily the best duck hunting, duck call brand in the history of the industry.
It is. It's changed maybe a little bit, but yeah, the atmosphere is still pretty cool. So we just finished up a deal this past weekend called Call-A-Palooza. And you haven't, I don't think you've been here since we got the new part done. I don't know, but we've got a tap room up front, and we work with a local brewery out of Little Rock called Flyway Brewing Company. And we've got a beer with our name on it, RNT Flying Duck. Now, don't get me talking about all the different beer varieties. I don't know that very well. There's a Pilsner and there's IPAs and, at first I didn't think I'd like any of it. I'm your basic savage redneck Bud Light guy, but they're actually pretty dang good. So with that, during Call-A-Palooza, man, we had a dinner. We sold tickets for dinner on Tuesday night. Then they had the Jay Stevens night Wednesday, then a VIP night on Thursday night. And man, every night people were having a big time. That atmosphere was kind of back that you're talking about. And during hunting season, it gets like that a lot. So yeah, it's still there. It's a little different now that Butch is gone, and it's got a little different feel to it. But yeah, we still got a pretty cool atmosphere hanging around here. So Tuesday night we have an event, sold out tickets, people just drinking some beers, having a big time, hanging out in the shop all day. We'd have to run them out so we could set up the tables. And Wednesday night was a Jay Stevens dinner. Same thing. Then Thursday night, a VIP dinner. And people would get here early and they'd hang out up front and have some beers and look at stuff and just have a big time. To the point, business still going on back here where I'm at in the offices. So we'd head up there and people would stop you and you'd be tuning duck calls for folks, and pretty fun, pretty good time. And you get that same atmosphere again at the World, people coming to the shop, wanting calls tuned, wanting to hang out. Sometimes it's most appreciative, but sometimes you're like, man, I've been hunting this morning. We need to dump this video. We need to make sure his batteries are charged. We need to tune these calls. And folks, they just want to come be a part, right? And sometimes it's sometimes you can get yourself hung up there and not get everything done you need.
I understand that. Let's talk about, before I go into my next question on Jim Ronquest's project that you're completing with the governor of South Dakota that we both have a kindness for. Your good friend and the owner of Rich and Tone Calls, John Stevens, 3-time world champion of champions. Does anything surprise you anymore with this man, of this new call line he's got and what he's doing with, bringing back the old school, the designs, I believe, if I remember right, because I did at one time, used to hunt with John over at Russell's, and I would get to stay at his house and hunt his farm. And there was, him and his family are just great, great human beings. But he is on a different level of thinking, in my opinion. I've always told everybody that John Stevens is a genius. And I understand that this word gets thrown around in a lot of different arenas. You could be a musical genius, you could be this, but I believe John's educated, college degree in architecture, very, very intelligent on the book smart level. But creativity, he stays to himself a lot. But is he a genius in your opinion, Jim Ronquest? And does anything this man does it continue to blow your mind, or do you just wake up and be like, oh, that's just John for you?
Some of both, some of both. His creativity is pretty amazing, the things he comes up with. And you go, at first, you're like, I don't know about that. And you go, oh, that makes good sense. So really, that part doesn't surprise me at all. Like you said, he does kind of keep to himself, but sometimes he's better. But that's just, everybody's cut a little different. But John always amazes me in what he comes up with an idea, and he'll try to see it through. So his work ethic is unbelievable. His willingness to get there is what makes him what he is. Not back to, we talked about his duck calling yesterday. Not only was he a good duck caller, he was a hard worker, and he's very creative. So that combination beats raw talent every time. So, and the same thing in the business life, or working up here, ideas he had for the front of the shop, the new retail part, we call the Flying Duck Tap Room and retail store. He kind of got out of budget for us, but man, we had plans of a huge museum, a mezzanine upstairs, and I'm like, man, that's pretty dang creative, Johnny. So sometimes he'll come up with stuff, and I'm like, wow, where'd he come up with that at? Other times it's like, man, that's just Johnny. Just know that's just Johnny. Great guy, big-hearted. It's a lot of people that don't know him. You do. They'll go, man, I was in there today. I spoke to him. He didn't look at me, or he just kept walking. Man, that's Johnny. He's just like that. Once you understand that he is kind of to himself and is pretty quiet, that's kind of the way he is. But as you well know, when you get him relaxed around friends, you remember all the times we'd cut up at the Oregon Waterfowl Festival.
The best.
Hanging out at the campground up there. So He is a pretty amazing individual for sure.
If you do come back if you get back into fighting, shape, duck calling shape, you talked about that. That's a very cool way to look at it of processing the body and being able to get your lung capacity up and your cardio and all that. But do you bring John Stevens as your coach? You're a UFC fighter, Jim Ronquest. He's in your corner.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd ask him to be anyway.
Is he a good coach?
Especially now.
Can he teach a duck call?
Yeah, he and I took over doing the kids clinics right before Butch passed. That Butch had done for every year, and now John and I get the pleasure to do them. And yeah, he's a pretty good teacher. We've discussed how to teach the kids and get stuff out, and he's good with once you get him where he'll pass on ideas. He's good about that. Doesn't do it a lot, but he'll tell you, what's what. It just takes him a minute to get there. Or I think he would if it was him and I sitting up front, nobody around, us trying to put one together. I think he would be a great coach.
I might have to come in if you blowing it. I think I got to check my schedule because I know that I'm hunting during Thanksgiving weekend. But man, that'd be awesome to come in there if you do compete in it and watch you win it and and then it'll give me an excuse to drive through that liquor drive-through
liquor store.
Drive-through liquor store. You just got to text me and let me know if you decide to do it because I'd like to see that.
It's about the time of year where I need to make up my mind. If I do, I need to go all in. I don't want to go halfway. If I go, I either want to be a spectator or I want to make a run at it before why I think I still can make a run for it.
Has Brad won it yet?
Some good.
Sorry.
No, Brad's not won it. Logan Hancock, Logan's really good. David St. John. There's some pretty stout guns in there for sure. The biggest thing that would be in my favor is everybody's had to set out a little bit. But I've been out longer than any of those guys have. But if I can go into it and get my head right, get my head in it, I'd have a shot. I think no guarantees. But it'd be kind of interesting. We'll just see what the rest of the year brings.
I get it. Just let me know if you would, please, sir. If you could answer me the question on our South Dakota project. You've been with so many good duck hunters in the field. Now I want to bring this back just to timber now because I know that Tony Vandemore can run it in Missouri. I know that he could probably do it in the timber. I want Arkansas-based duck hunters. Who are they on the Mount Rushmore being in the timber? And
I knew that's where he's going to go.
And if you're going to hurt anybody's feelings, I understand it can be more than 4, but I got a couple in there that I want to start off with just asking you if they make the bill. Does John Stevens make the cut from your times in the woods with him for him to be able to control ducks, manhandle them, break them down, and finish them in trees?
Yeah, he's not had to hunt the public enough. But look here, John is so creative, such a good duck caller. He figured it out pretty quick. We've been together a time or two in the bottoms, and we go put out the most shows and let them spell it out for you. So yeah, you definitely put him on there.
The first man that I ever met with 3 names was introduced to me by you. Okay, Bobby Joe Willie. There. Bobby Joe Willie's certainly in there. Tell me why, and tell the world who Bobby Joe Willie is, please.
Man, Bobby Joe Willie's a great guy. I haven't talked to Bobby Joe lately, but he is a very cool woods hunter from northeast Arkansas. I think he was, I can't prove this, but he may have been the first person to ever do real jail time for shooting too many ducks in the state. And you old saying, you always heard people say never trust a guy with 3 first names. Well, how do you go wrong with Bobby Joe Willie? However you turn it around, you can't be wrong. And he's a super good guy. But he, like a lot of guys that were pretty good, they might have been over the top a time or two. And, of course, he was commercial hunting and whatnot. And you can read about it in the Arkansas Duck Hunters Almanac. He talks about it in there. But he really wasn't doing a lot wrong, but he went back hunting in the afternoon with some guys after they hunted in the woods in the morning, and they was undercover fellas. And next thing he knew, had some U.S. Marshals come knocking on his door. But when he went to court, because his livelihood was commercial duck hunting, guiding duck hunters, he couldn't carry a gun, but they let him finish duck season, finish out taking hunters to the woods. And then for I don't know how many years it was, he could still guide and not carry a gun. And now he's by the book now, I can promise you that. And a great guy, hilarious, one of the funniest individuals ever.
I remember how funny it was. Was he in the Poachers and Preachers video?
I don't think so.
He wasn't in that one.
I don't think so.
Okay, so is there a way to pick the best you've been with? I know you're awesome. I know you're there, but I mean, is there a way to pick the best?
Man, I don't know how you would pick it, man. There's so many guys that are good, and I get around people that you've never heard of. That's not necessarily in the public eye. That just really good. I hunted with a fella a few years ago. He probably wouldn't want me to mention his name, so I won't. Just knowing, I would call him Mr. Richard. And I always like to go with folks like that, old timers that are kind of stuck in their ways, and just watch and listen, because you can learn something from them. And everybody's got cool licks, right? You know, what I call lick, however you hit it, you know, whap, 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 whatever that may be. This old boy's from South Arkansas, got some very fine woods, South Arkansas. And one of his big licks, he liked blowing game blowing a mondo now, but it's a 2-note lick. Ah, ah. That's it.
Really?
And that's interesting. The old duck come around, ah, ah, spun around there. I said, well, that's cool. And then he'd blow him quacks. Just cool. Another good fella. I'll mention this fella's name because you know his son. You remember Cade? We called him Cooter. Cade Parnell. His daddy, Oos. Oos is one of my all-time favorites. Just to hear him blow. He blew really well. He's a great duck caller. He wasn't really fancy, not fancy at all, but he's a firm believer in that C chord, that bass. And he'd tell you quack, had a basic old feed call, but sounded like a duck. And he had a fast lick and a slow lick. And he could read ducks as good as anybody, and he'd hit a slow lick or a fast lick. And he almost sounded like sometimes like he had so much bass, he's banging two boards together. But it worked, man. He's just a really cool duck caller, fun guy to duck hunt with. No matter if he's in the field or the woods. Man, there's a lot of good hands, you know, from back in the old days. You know, you got to give Kirk McCullough props. Bounced into him in the woods a time or two. Him, Steve Schultz, Lester Capps. You know, he's kind of the patriarch of the modern era of modified oak blowers from the Biomeda Lower White River Basin. I got some recordings of Lester on my phone. Lester was really good. And one of the very best. Is
Trey a good timber hunter?
Well, he was going to be my next one. Trey, but when I was running Richtown Guide Service, Trey Bowe and another fellow from West Tennessee named Jason Jaton, JJ, were some of my main guys. And Trey Bowe and I'd go to the woods, and they'd call us the Bowe Brothers. And as far as working ducks with somebody to be on the same page, him and I get on the same page pretty quick, you know, and understood it. Trey Bowe was great in the woods. Guys nowadays, oh gosh, Chris Booker. Man, there's just a lot of them, Chad. You know, probably more so than what we really think out there. I'm intrigued by some of the hands older than me and that you never heard of, but you hear him pick up a duck call and you're like, holy smokes, man, that fella's good. And then watch him and listen, you can learn something from him. I always try to observe. If I'm a guest somewhere, I kind of go by the idea I leave my duck call in my pocket until I'm asked differently. That's kind of a manner, ethic around here. So if you invite me to your duck hole or duck hunting with you on your place, I leave my duck call in my pocket till you say something to me. That's just the way you do things. And most people reciprocate that. A lot of times because of my job, they'll say, all right, Jimbo, you call a shot, you handle the call, and they'll just automatically do that. But I typically just kind of lay low until I'm told different. But you can learn so much doing that. Like the fella I talked about a few minutes ago, Mr. Richard, he was one of them. I just watched and listened, and we shot ducks pretty quick and shot them right, and he talked them into giving up. There's other fellas like that. Marcus Beard, Brother Bo. There's some salty folks out there, and folks that I don't know that are very good. I've never hunted with these guys, but I hear they're good. You ever been around here seen a Lyle real estate sign? Heard of a guy named Gar Lyle?
Yep.
Gar's on the board at Delta Waterfowl. He and his sons, they run a real estate business, farms, recreational properties, that kind of thing. They're old school oak blowers and getting Mondos and rocking R's now, but I've never been with them, but I understand that they're really good. Another one that I got to give props to, because I about half raised him, is Daniel Duke. He's a young guy coming up, but I remember Rosie would bring him home on Fridays after school, and he'd stay the weekends with us, and she'd take him back home on Monday mornings. And he'd spend most of Christmas vacation at our house helping us with the guide service and hunting and calling. And he come around pretty quickly too. But there's just, it'd be hard for me to separate them out. There are just so many really good ones.
Yeah, it's really interesting to know when you get involved in an industry and you get so gung-ho about whether it's brands or pro staffing or building brands or whatever, just how much really cool stuff is out there that you don't get to pay attention to, you refuse to pay attention to because you got blinders on. And that's what I learned with you a year ago, standing with you in Maryland, is like how much I miss you, how much I miss that knowledge and that story, that ability to educate people on why this lifestyle is so important. And that it's not about TV. It's not about who sells the most duck calls. It's about what you're saying, these individuals that enjoy the culture and they respect it. They have compassion for these animals. They respect the resource, and they're just human beings that enjoy being in the woods. And sometimes I think a lot of us, including myself, have let that get away. And it's a shame. It sucks to know that, because I'm looking back on it now. It's been over a decade since the Oregon Waterfowl Festival. It's been 8 years since I've been in the Rich-N-Tone shop. It just sucks because there's so much that you miss that you just want to grab onto, if that makes sense to you.
No, it does. And I talk about that with several guys. Heath Van Lanningham's another one you'd put in that list. Is back in the day, Heath and I was talking about this last night. We'd hunt public ground. We'd be commercial hunting. Him and Johnny Moffoo's hunted together, who's another one that you could potentially put on your Mount Rushmore list there, both on the stage and in the woods. But it'd be Heath and Johnny would be here. Kirk and Steve would be over there. I would be over here. Robin would be down there. Everybody there was a lot of respect amongst the other guys that were commercial hunting. And you would be, you wouldn't hunt so close to them that you would hurt each other. Now you may lose a bunch there, lose a bunch to us or whatever. Or if you get out of time, ducks finish on you and you shoot. And while you're picking them up, I'm getting a bunch started. And then I shoot, that way we're quarter to half mile, 3/4 mile apart up to a mile and a half. But, that shooting sometimes will mess them up. So if you ever get everybody going, the timing right, man, you can bang, bang, get done pretty quick. And we weren't busting up on folks or getting anybody's way. So we try to pass that on. And a young guy, you probably know, Will McBride. Will's a great guy, another great caller, man. He's awesome. But he gets a little caught up in the stuff you're talking about. He got tunnel vision, had the blinders on, as you said. I thought that was a good term because he's missing what it's all about. And he's, finally learning it's not how big the strap is at the end of the day. It's how you play the game. Sure, you want to smell burnt powder and you want your strap to be heavy, but you want to play the game in a way you can be proud of.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that you can recollect, go back. It's just like, man, just think about the way that I look at it is just, I was a baseball player from Northern Nevada that really didn't even know what it was all about. I remember going to Stuttgart my very first time in 1999 and just seeing the industry and how awesome it was, and Max and Richington, and met Fred Zink and Kelly Powers, all these guys, and Tim Grounds, which is another one we lost the last couple of years. And it's one of those things to where I'm so thankful that I got to see it, that I got to be a part of it, because it taught me a lot. And I don't think that a lot of people understand how much that meant to who, whatever I went on to do or whatever I went on to be a part of. I think that those days in that Richington shop and practice, and even though I was terrible, I remember Butch and you guys would listen to my routine, and I'd go out and I'd get on the bus, the old school bus back then, which has changed now, and draw my ticket and see all the guys that Charles Petty, they would mess with each other. And there was just a bunch of friendships and a bunch of good people that got it. They were playing the game and they all supported each other. They were competitive, but the duck hunting game is special to me. It's really, really awesome to know that there's so many different segments of it. But in the end of the day, all of us are really chasing that freaking sunrise and that part of the lifestyle that exists when you see it done right, but not necessarily have to kill every single one of them. And I think that guys like Bobby Joe Willie or Pat Pitt and the guys that have been in that positions in their lives, I think they look back and they probably regret might not be the word, but we all, like I talked to you last time, there's maturity levels through this, and they probably don't need those heavy straps anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, this is what it's all about, is being able to talk and catch up and reminisce on what I got to experience back there. And without the mallard duck, Jimbo, without the mallard duck, I don't have anything. I mean that. Like, I would have been a toilet pumper. I would have had a toilet. I would still be in the construction site services game, which is an awesome game to be in. But because of the mallard duck, I've been to Argentina, because I got to meet people that invited me to Argentina. Because of the mallard duck, I met Jim Ronquest. I met John Stevens. Because of the mallard duck, I got to see a lot of things like the Snake River in Idaho. I'd have never been on the Snake River in Idaho if it wasn't for a mallard duck. And that's how I look at it. The mallard duck is the basis that has given me all of these outlets and the ability or the luck to build this network, if that makes sense to you.
Makes perfectly good sense. And I wish more people look at it like that. Old Green Tops pulled a lot of people together, and probably the cool thing about duck hunting, just as far as going hunting, is the people. It puts everybody on the same page. Now, granted, there's folks that can afford really nice private properties or can do different things, but you put a boat and water on the Snake River, and you and I and two big time lawyers, a doctor, and a rocket scientist go duck hunting. We're now all of a sudden on the same page. On the same level. It kind of breaks down all the societal ups and downs that the rest of the world deals with, and it's fun. I get to help out sometimes on some really nice places and around some folks that have, done very well in life, and talk to them just like you and me talking. It's no big deal. And you mentioned that. A fella I should have mentioned a while ago when you talk about duck hunters, there's an old hand, he's still around, the old Russell McCullum property. Is now owned by a fellow named Whit Stevens. But the manager there for years and years was a fellow named Buck Mayhew. If you hunted out there with John, you met Buck. Yep. He run the show. And I was doing some video stuff over there at Russell's old place, and Buck was taking me from hole to hole, talking about each hole and how ducks acted. And we get talking about working ducks and talking about when to call ducks, how to call them. He's pointing about this tree, the wind here. And just another one that just, if you just be quiet and listen, you'll learn something, and he's extremely cool. And the old boy's getting around great, still hunting all the time, and knows the game, buddy. You may not like the way he calls or he blows an old ditto, but he can blow it well. He blows it like he wants to blow it, and he can make ducks do what he wants them to do. So if you'll just listen to people like that, you'll learn something about how to play the game, or you'll put a new trick in your bag, in your toolbox somewhere along the way.
I love it. I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I think to go along with what you said, I know we're coming to an end, Jimbo, and I do want to do another one of these, but the green top, you've come up with some of the best names for ducks. I love them. I love how you call the widgeon the cotton top. I think there's even companies named after Jim Ronquest slogans now, Jimboisms. but it's also taught us a lot of lessons. It's taught us patience. It's taught us respect. It's taught us forgiveness. It's taught us thankfulness. I can go on and on what I've been taught by my association with individuals like you and being able to be around what you call green tops and mallard ducks. I think that they have done a lot for my soul. I know they've done a lot for your and your family's soul, your well-being, your livelihood. And I'm just glad that I get to call you a friend. I'm glad that I get to text you and have you come on here. I'm glad that I know for a fact there's going to be another time where we stand around and I will have a Jack Daniels. You'll probably have a Jim Beam. I don't know that for sure, but I might have a Maker's Mark or Jefferson's or
there you go. Had some Blantons last night. That was pretty good. Maybe some E.H. Taylor.
Yes, sir. Is May H. Taylor? Is that Texas?
E.H. Taylor. It's Kentucky.
Is that Kentucky bourbon? I just had one with an MH in it that was Texas. But yeah, I look forward to that, my man. I appreciate you coming on here. And I mean, I hope you blow in the champions. I'll be in your corner. I hope you win it. You got some stiff competition, but that's what that game's all about.
Oh yeah, there's some solid hands in it. And like I said, we'll just have to figure out if I want to get in it, you know. But thank you for having me on. And also too, want to pass on to you. I'm glad to see this Chad coming out and not the flat bill earring wearing. I like this Chad. This Chad's cool. Thank you for having me on. Let me be a part of your show.
Well, I appreciate it, my man. And it's funny, I went through some of my old photo shoot pictures with the flat bill and how I was when I first was getting in with Bandit and all that when we started it. And it's like I say, I went through a time and people look at it and go, what in the hell were you thinking? And it's, hey, you got to look back on it. It's a maturity process, my man. It is what it is.
Right. But you can always learn from your past and learn from your mistakes too. So
yes, sir.
Good for you, partner.
Well, I appreciate your time, Jimbo Ronquest, and let's do it again, man. I'll look forward to seeing you soon, hopefully.
Let me know, man. Maybe we can cross paths this year and share a blind somewhere.
I would freaking do anything. I'm telling you to your face, I would do anything to have that happen.
Well, maybe it'll work out. I haven't figured out nothing about where I'm going or what I'm doing this fall for TV stuff. So I know there's a couple that I'm going to hit for sure, but once we start figuring it out, maybe we can cross up somewhere.
Yeah, share some footage or something.
Yeah.
I like that idea. All right, well, tell everybody I said hello. Tell Rosie and Peanut we said hello, and we're thinking about y'all out here in Reno, and I'm proud to know you, Jimbo. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, man. Be good, be careful.
All right, Jimbo.
Remember, shoot where they're going, not where they're at.
And if that don't
light your fire, your wood's wet.
Oh, I love it. If that don't light your fire, wood wet. This has been another episode of the Fowl Life Podcast brought to you by Gerber Gear. Tom, Jake, hit that button. This is 2 AM Logic. The song is called My Fowl Life.